Staying with our top story now, President Ramaphosa earlier laid out his plan to revive the country's economy. Let's get more reaction. Azar Jammine, Econometrics chief economist, joins us now live. Azar, thanks for your time. Appreciate it. So you heard what the president had to say. Should we be optimistic or not?
I think we can be partially optimistic. There'll no doubt be a huge element of skepticism. I think the proof, once again, is will we see the implementation of the intentions? Because certainly there were key initiatives that the president addressed that I think are very constructive. Infrastructural investment is absolutely necessary because that's been one of the weaknesses of the economy of the past decade and has been a contributor towards lower economic growth, the fact that we haven't been investing in infrastructure in order to enhance service delivery. The freeing up of the energy sector to allow independent power producers to join the market more freely will increase competition and should improve the availability of electricity. Then you've got the release of broadband spectrum, a date given now, March next year. That's going to help enhance access to information technology, especially amongst the poorer people, and make data cheaper. And then the biggest thing of all is the determination to fight corruption expressed. Well, we've seen a lot of action in that regard in recent weeks in the courts and in the Zondo Commission. And now the president is coming through and saying we really need to get on top of that. If we do, we'll be surprised at how huge we suddenly find a savings in government spending that we didn't think existed. Because what corruption has effectively entailed is government paying a premium on all the services that it has been and goods that it has been procuring, and suddenly you won't have that premium any longer to pay, to bloat government spending if we succeed fighting corruption.
So let's talk about the ways the president mentioned that we can revive the economy locally, and that he talks about, producing things locally and exporting it. We couldn't do it before. We couldn't get this right before. I know we were talking about, producing our own diamonds to sell. Instead, we're currently selling it raw and buying it back at a more expensive price. But why would we get this right now? Are there measures in place, policy in place that will allow this to happen now?
I'm afraid this is precisely where there is an Achilles heel in his presentation. We succeeded even during the apartheid era for a good few years in the 60s when we were forced to localize and industrialize, and we managed to do it. But at the time, the workforce was very much more educated and better trained than it is at the moment. The declines in productivity that we've seen over the past decade are a manifestation of the loss of capacity in the economy and especially in the manufacturing sector. So, one has difficulty in seeing how we can suddenly become more competitive and begin localizing other than through the imposition of very large tariffs on imported goods to make our local production artificially competitive. And one of the outcomes of that, as we saw in the 80s and 90s, was massive increases in inflation that we couldn't actually get down until such time as we started opening up the economy to the rest of the world.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it. Azar Jammine, Econometrics chief economist.